So first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their schedule for this episode of Next Opportunity Social. I am beyond excited to be interviewing our guest here, Mr. David Tarver. But for those of you who may be uninitiated, at NextOppSocial, our goal here is promote business owners here in the Detroit metropolitan area, give voice to those individuals who are launching and growing businesses, and provide people an opportunity to learn, to experience, to go further, to grow more, to learn more, and do more. And look, if you are looking for content for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs, you're at the right place. And without further ado, I'm going to get out the way here because I was beyond excited when you accepted the invitation, Mr. Tarver. Been such a, I wouldn't say a fan, but an admirer of the work that you've done and the contribution you've made and the work that you've done historically, but also presently. And so, if you don't mind, introduce yourself, let the world know who have not been introduced to you as of yet. What are we up to? What are you doing? How did you start your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, how you doing, Dewan? It's good to be with you. And I remember seeing you here at Space Lab Detroit. I happen to be sitting at Space Lab Detroit right now. And I know you to be a pretty persistent and, passionate business person. So happy to talk with you. So I'm a kid from Flint, Michigan, grew up in Flint, and made my way to General Motors Institute in Flint back in the ancient days. Went there for 2 years, went to University of Michigan, bachelor's and master's degrees in electrical engineering there. And then I went out to New Jersey to work for a place called AT&T Bell Laboratories, which at the time was the place to work. If you were an engineer or a scientist, there were only a couple really top-notch places you wanted to work in this country. One was Bell Labs, the other was IBM Labs. And at Bell Labs, that's the place where the transistor was invented and the data modem and the communication satellite and all that stuff. So it was really a great place for an engineer to work. I worked there for 7 years. I didn't go there to stay. I went out there because I had always wanted to have my own business. And I thought that to be an engineer, have a business in engineering, it would be helpful to work at the forefront of the field. And so I spent 7 years there. I gained a lot of knowledge, met some really great folks. And I managed to convince a couple of those folks, two African-American engineers who were working in the same group with me. They were a few years younger. But I enticed them to come and work in my basement with me on the concept for a business that I developed while I was at Bell Labs. And we started that business and grew it to a pretty good size. We were doing business in 25 countries, manufacturing and selling telecommunications test equipment. In 1995, we sold the business to a company from England that is now called Spirit PLC. And since those days, I've been just doing different projects of my own choosing because I haven't had to worry about, making my livelihood from what I do, so I could take more chances and do different things. And so I got involved with trying to improve the education system in the area I was living in New Jersey at the time. Did that for a number of years, had some good results, moved back here to Michigan. I finished writing a book about my entrepreneurial journey that was called Proving Ground, a memoir. Published that in 2012. And also in 2012, I started teaching at University of Michigan in the Center for Entrepreneurship. And coming back here to Michigan after all those years in New Jersey, I noticed how bad things had gotten in Flint and Detroit, Pontiac, places like that. And it seemed that no one was really paying a lot of attention to bringing entrepreneurial innovation to these cities. And so I decided in 2014 to start an organization that would facilitate that. It was called Urban Entrepreneurship Initiative. We started that organization in 2014. I was still teaching at University of Michigan. Um, we had some really great times with that. We had a big seminar, a symposium in Ann Arbor in 2014. We did one in Detroit in 2015 and in Flint in 2016. And I think we raised the awareness level of the need for more of this kind of entrepreneurial innovation in Detroit. A lot has changed since those days. I think other people may have had the same ideas. I worked for a year at Wayne State from 2017 to 2018 because they were interested in improving their own innovation and entrepreneurship approach and programs. So I worked with the provost at Wayne State for about a year, helped them revitalize their programs. And since then, again, I've been teaching at University of Michigan, and we're in the process now of reintroducing the Urban Entrepreneurship Initiative with a new, broader area that we're covering, basically the world, and with a new business strategy, a new mission. And so that's what I've been working on for the last few months, in addition to everything else.
All right. I love your humility. You shared a lot that I want to unpack here. And I guess the first question I would ask you, particularly in the beginning, because something you said caught my attention, I'm really reflecting on right now. The getting money is an issue out the way, so you can focus on what it is you accomplish. But usually in the small business community, when someone talks about selling a business, they're usually talking about selling it for 500, maybe a couple million. They're talking about selling an 8-unit or maybe a 40-unit building for a couple million. But I know when you sold those businesses, you definitely netted more than that. But before we go there, you said you went there, you kind of learned on somebody else's dime, and you decided to become an entrepreneur. But where was that seed planted? And how did you come to a place where you said, you know what, entrepreneurship is a route I can take? Because you could have easily stayed in corporate America and thrived and been very successful. But I remember when I started my entrepreneur journey 20 years ago, people said, if I told someone I'm self-employed, I'm an entrepreneur, they basically said, oh, you're just unemployed, you can't find a job, right? That was the assumption. And I know for you, it was even less popular or sexy to be an entrepreneur when you began your journey. So what brought you to that place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I grew up, during the 60s, civil rights era. My father served in the Army in World War II. He and my mother moved to Flint in, I think, 1950 or something like that, 47. I can't know the exact year. But they moved because my mom got caught trying to use a white bathroom at the hospital where she was working as a nurse. And she was reprimanded for that. And they decided to leave the South at that point and move to Flint. And my father was in the Army during World War II, but he was trained as a radio operator and technician, and he loved electronics. And so I grew up in a household with electronics and books about different kinds of physics topics, lasers and photoelectric cells and transistors and these kinds of things. And I was an amateur radio operator because of my father's influence. I got my amateur radio license when I was 13 years old. So that was one thing. Seeing this change in technology and seeing the technology that was around just fascinated me, but also seeing the civil rights movement, feeling that things were going to change as a result of that movement, and seeing the limited opportunities my father had. My father, as I say, loved electronics, but he fixed radios and TVs for people in the neighborhood. It wasn't possible for him at that time to get a job in the electronics industry. And so seeing all of that, and also growing up in a town where, you would go down to the railroad tracks and you would see cars being shipped out of town, automobiles, from Buick factories and Chevrolet truck factories, this kind of thing. I made the connection that, wow, if you make something and ship it, money comes back, right? And so, but I didn't know if it would be possible for me to do something like that, because it hadn't been possible for my father. But with the civil rights movement as a backdrop, I decided that my mission was to see if this could be done, if things had changed enough where a Black person could start a business from scratch. And because I was interested in electronics technology, that was my area. So it was natural that I would start a business that had to deal with electronics. And so that's why I went to work at Bell Labs, because again, I wanted to be, at the forefront of that field and have as much expertise as I could gain in that area. So that's really where the impetus for starting a business came along. And I was a manager at AT&T by the time I left, and I was up for promotion to the next level manager. And there were people at the place. There were 6,000 people at the location that I worked at for AT&T Bell Labs. Most of them engineers and scientists, and the people that knew me thought maybe something had gone wrong, and maybe I had had a nervous breakdown or something, and that's why I was leaving. And it was even more stark when my buddies left, because my wife at the time was working also at Bell Labs, and when I left, we still had enough money where we could get by. My two buddies, one of them had just gotten married the summer before he left, and his wife did not make nearly as much money as she was an administrative, kind of clerical employee, and the other fellow wife was like a technician. So neither of them made enough money to support their family. So it was even more stark and seemingly crazy for them to leave positions as members of technical staff at AT&T Bell Laboratories to go work in Dave's basement. But again, I think the thing that motivated us was that we wanted to, prove what we could do. It went beyond money. Although my buddy Steve will always say it was money. It went beyond money, because we didn't want to, we wanted to show that, we had value, and we wanted to prove what that value was out there in the world. And so you alluded to the fact that, we sold the business for a substantial amount. We sold it for $32 million in 1995, which, $32 million was actually $32 million in 1995. It's not as much now, but that set us on a path where we didn't have to worry about, our livelihoods. And, we also, when we sold the business, we owned 100% of the business. We didn't have side investors, venture capital people, angel investors, any of that, because that wasn't available to us. So the good part is that we owned the business that we sold, and I was the majority owner, and the other two guys own significant shares in the business.
Okay. There's a lot I want to unpack there too as well. Man, I wish I had more time, right? But because there's a lot there. I mean, in our conversations with entrepreneurs, particularly those from your generation, what I hear repeatedly is just mission orientation, right? That it was spurred by more than just competition, or some of the reasons that other people may pursue entrepreneurship today, for the fame and popularity and all these different things. And of course, those are the accoutrements to success, being an entrepreneur, if you're successful and you're seeking those things. But I repeatedly hear this mission orientation. And for me, that's exciting, because it tells me that movements matter, right? I I guess another question I would have is, listening to you talking about literally you're starting a business out of your basement, so you're bootstrapping. And I have to imagine, there's fear, there's anxiety because of the current circumstances, particularly for your partners who are working with you. But then there also had to be a moment where you turn the corner and, you realize that not only can we make a living doing this, but we can earn a significant amount of money. Because when I listen to you, it doesn't sound like you set out to start a business that was going to earn you 32 million or do $100 million in revenues and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you arrived at that place. And I've always tend to believe there's levels to belief when you're an entrepreneur, right? A lot of times when you're first starting out, you're thinking, okay, hopefully I earn enough just to make ends meet, take care of my family, handle my responsibilities. And you reach a point where, okay, I can take some vacations, buy a nice car. We can go out to eat every now and again. And then you start getting to that rare air where, you're wealthy. You reach a point where you're actually operating in a space of wealth. When you were reaching that point, what was going through your mind? How did that change you, change the way you operated the business? Now, what did that look like, that transition? Mm-hmm. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you thought from the beginning this was going to happen.
We thought we would be successful. We didn't know how successful. We thought we had a good shot at it. By the way, the lights went out in here.
Yeah, it's a timer.
Oh,
yeah, it's a motion sensor and a timer. There it is.
So I would say, as I say, we wanted to be successful. We thought we would be successful. We didn't know how long it would take. I remember my business plan that I did so we started the business. We got a loan of $150,000, an SBA guaranteed loan from a local bank. And I had to sign a personal guarantee. My wife had to sign. We had to pledge our house, everything else. And the interest rate, this was during the Reagan recession and stagflation and all this kind of stuff. And the interest rate was 16% on that. No, I'm sorry. It was 13% on that. And so at any rate, we, as I say, we wanted to be successful. We thought we would be successful. But that first year was very difficult because we were just, getting rolling. I left AT&T Bell Labs first in order to get things rolling, to get our prototype turned into the first production article of the product, to get the loan, squared away, all that sort of thing. And then my buddy Steve left several months later and joined the company. He left Bell Labs and joined me in the basement. And then a few months later, Charles left and joined me in the basement. So that first year, the good thing is that the product that we were selling was this very sophisticated piece of telecommunications test equipment. As I said, it cost about $20,000 a piece. And so we didn't have to sell very many of these things to generate revenue. And actually it was, the price of our first product was $16,950. And I remember it because at the time, that's what a BMW 3 Series cost. And we used to laugh and say, we're selling something that costs the same thing as a BMW 3 Series, and it takes them a whole company to make this thing. There's only 3 of us. We're making this thing and we can sell it. And so we thought we could generate some revenue pretty quickly. Our first year, our sales were $100,000. And that wasn't great because, we had expenses and everything, but we ended up that first year with a profit of $2,000. The second year, our sales were $872,000. And again, there was 3 of us plus a technician at that point and a administrative assistant. So our profit was pretty considerable. that second year. So, our sales ramped up fast, and on paper, we were doing pretty well pretty quickly, but you never can relax because there's so many challenges out there. There's competition. You worry that something could happen here or something could happen there, run you out of business. So we never got to a point where we really just felt like we could relax and sit back. And frankly, that's one of the things that helped to motivate selling the business when we were in a position to do it, because we had worked hard and generated all this value, and we wanted to take some of that value, most of the value, and capture that. And I used to tell my friends in college that I was going to go to work for a year after college, start a business, and I was going to sell this business when I was 40 years old. And after that, just walk the world, right? And I ended up staying at Bell Labs for 7 years. And on the day that we closed the sale of the business, I was 42 years old. So, we didn't miss it by much. But so again, I would say the point at which I felt like I had made it and could relax a little bit was the day of the sale.
I love it.
Wasn't any day leading up to that.
I love it. Would it be fair to say that at the time when you launched the company, despite the innovation and everything that was transpiring, you were operating in blue seas? You think that gave you a huge advantage over someone else in blue seas, in the sense that you didn't have a whole lot of individuals, especially in the African American community, playing in that industry to compete with?
Well, yeah, I would say the industry we were in, there were very, very few African Americans, but there was competition.
Yeah.
So our main competitor, I didn't even know about until, when we first started working in the basement, I didn't know about this competitor. But I'm walking down the hallway at Bell Labs one day, and I look into one of the labs, and I see this new piece of equipment I hadn't seen before. And it was something that was directly competitive with what we were doing. There was an earlier version of what we were doing that was not as sophisticated. I wasn't worried about that. So yeah, again, there was never any point where, we didn't have to really work hard and compete. But the thing is, we had three highly educated people, me and my two buddies. I was a master's degree from University of Michigan and 7 years experience at Bell Labs. My two co-founders, one was Georgia Tech, Morehouse, Georgia Tech dual degree undergrad, and then Stanford University graduate degree in electrical engineering. And my other co-founder, University of South Carolina undergrad, top of his class, and Rutgers University graduate degree. So we were three highly skilled engineers, and the people we were competing against didn't have that level of capability in their company. These were, even though we had competitors, they were small companies like us. Mm-hmm. And they didn't have the Bell Labs pedigree, and they didn't have necessarily education background. There were a lot of electronics companies in those days that were like centered on one person. Some guy had an idea and he brings a few people together to make this thing. And then when he gets tired or dies or something, the company goes in the ground, right? But we had three people, and we were focused on building a company and building an infrastructure that would last beyond us. And even after we sold the company continued to do well and thrive. And I would say in 2012 or 2013, somewhere in that area, the total sales of our company, the thing that we started, crossed $1 billion. And it continued going up from there. So the buyer got a very good deal.
Yeah.
So again, it was, I don't know if that answers your question, but in those days, I would say that this notion of electronics technology and microcomputer technology, that was a whole new thing. And there weren't nearly as many people doing it as there are today, right? Today, that's, computers are in everything. In those days, it was novel to have a computer inside some piece of equipment controlling the equipment. And that's what we brought to the party, or to use digital signal processing in some sort of a device. That was a whole new thing back then. Now you got digital signal processing that's way more powerful than what we had in our device in a freaking AirPod, And so, things have changed in that regard. But relative to what was there, we were very competitive.
So I'm hearing a couple things. I'm hearing urgency. I'm hearing skill stacks. I'm hearing that you knew going into it, we weren't building something to hustle. This was going to be a company. You're going to build something. You had an end game. And that end game was to build a massive company that was going to be an asset, be of value, you're to sell it. And I got to imagine that influenced a lot of the different decisions you made up until then. And then, of course, I'm hearing the fact that you were kind of pioneers in many respects in an industry that in technology we take for granted today. I love it. So you sell the company. I imagine you had to celebrate for a little while, travel, have a little bit of fun. And you come back. And you come back to the city and you see what's transpiring. And a lot of individuals would have just said, well, like, find myself a nice home, just go somewhere relax, chill out at St. Kitts and enjoy the rest of my life. And when I observed you a handful of times, it looks like to me, you're out working some of these 30 and 40-year-olds running around.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is due to the time we grew up in and not taking anything for granted and always being scared. But let me just take a step back for a minute because, and maybe it'll illustrate why, I've taken some of the approaches I've taken afterward. We started our company with one product, right? It was this thing, and people don't even remember what a data modem is, nowadays. But our system tested data modems, and it tested them, more efficiently than the solutions that were out there. And data modems used to be how everybody connected to, the internet in the early days. But then those data modems kind of played out, and cable modems came in, high-speed cable communication and whatnot. So data modems kind of played out, and we had to get into a new area. We had to develop new products in a new area that was not familiar to us. So we moved into the wireless communications area, making test equipment that tested the performance of cell phones, cell phone radio transceivers. And a very important thing, and that was a huge market, and that's what really drove the company growth up even further, much further. And that's what facilitated, the sale of the company, because that was such an attractive area. So we not only had to develop an initial product, we had to develop a new product in a whole new area. It's kind of like starting out, making the Apple II computer or something like that, and then having to change over to making iPhones, right?
Yeah.
And so, when we sold the company, we also had developed over the years this idea that each one of these areas of communications, whether it's digital communications or wireless communications or whatever, it needed a test solution, right? So that people could develop the products in those areas. So when we sold the company to this British outfit, we convinced them that our mission was to cover all of these areas, right? And to make products in all these areas. And hey, you're buying our company, but this is an opportunity for you to continue this mission, and you have a lot more money than we had. They ended up changing the whole company around, taking on our mission and changing their entire company. We were their first telecommunications company acquisition.
Wow.
They did change their entire company into a telecommunications company. They sold all of the other divisions off, and they asked me to be the group president of this new telecommunications company, right? This new telecommunications business. And so I went out and bought a few companies that we were familiar with and grew this thing up pretty rapidly to a place where in just a couple of years, we had a market value of probably $2 billion on the London Stock Exchange. And so, as you alluded to, we had an idea from the very first days that we started this company of what it could become. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have the wherewithal to fully implement that, but we always kept that in mind. And even after we sold the company, we carried that out. And my two co-founders, I left the business in 1999 after being the group president because I didn't sell the business to stay around and, be a corporate, executive.
Right.
But they stayed. They stayed for another 12, 13 years and, managed that business, our initial business. And the business that we were bought into, got a lot larger. It's still today. You can look at Spirent PLC. Spirent PLC, SPIRENT is one of the major telecommunications test equipment providers in the world. And that started with our little company. We were their first telecommunications acquisition. And the mission that they went on was our mission, right? But we didn't mind because, we achieved what we set out to achieve.
So, you dropped like an invaluable gem in terms of how you were able to acquire buy-in from another company. But I still, my mind has been firing. We sold a company for $32 million. That's not like going down the street and selling a car. Yeah. or selling a home or a watch, right? $32 million company. I know there's so much that is involved in that process, but for those who have companies, organizations that they're building, and that's part of their end game as well, I guess what insight could you share? What does that process look like? You build a multi-million-dollar company, or in today's standard, a billion-dollar company, and you want to sell it. What does that process look like?
Yeah, so it's not all that different from selling anything, selling a home or that, because you have built something of value, right? Yep. And so basically the process is you have to identify what that value is. You have to describe this thing that you have for sale, this company that you have for sale, and there has to really be value there, right? So if it's something that a potential buyer feels like they could do easily or for money, then they probably wouldn't buy it, or they would want to spend less than maybe you're looking for. But really what you do is you describe what it is that you are selling. You describe the company and what its business model is, and what its product offerings are, and what makes it valuable. You create a selling document. It's almost like a brochure for the business, right? Yep. And you do this with the help. We did it with the help of a broker, or sometimes people call it an investment banker. We worked with them, and they put the what they call selling memorandum together, and then they go out to the marketplace, to businesses that might look to acquire another business, and they shop it around, to a bunch of different people. And so you end up having people coming in to kick the tires, right? And talk to you about potentially buying this company. And that gets to be a little dicey process because you don't know if people are serious. You don't know if they might be a competitor, this kind of thing. So that can be a little nerve-wracking. And even after you have a letter of intent from somebody who's saying that they intend to buy the business, there's still a lot of due diligence that takes place. They have to come in and go over your finances, go over your operations, talk to your customers, make sure that customers you say you really have. Make sure you aren't selling to your brother-in-law or that your relatives aren't key executives in the company. They want to know that the thing they buy is still going to be there after the sale closes, right? And so that's this process in a nutshell. But it's like it's analogous to selling a house. You use a real estate agent instead of an investment banker, and they might put a brochure together for the house and set up a selling memorandum. And they bring people through to see it, who have to look around, look in the bedroom, have an inspector come and, make sure that nothing's about to break. So, it's a similar process.
Yeah. When you say make sure the business is viable, right? Being a former investment advisor, I know exactly what you're talking about, right? But I guess what I'm trying to do is figure out a way to make it plain and because obviously the value of the company just isn't the product.
Right.
It just isn't the service, right?
Yeah.
That broker is selling your systems. They're selling the leadership, the individuals the actual employees, the staff. I know they're taking inventory of the training, the culture. They're taking inventory. Of course, they're doing demographic research to make sure there's a viable market.
Right.
It's all these different things that come into play.
Yeah.
And I guess in many respects, that's what I was really trying to tease out, for a person that has the mind that I'm going to build this, what are the things that make a business valuable aside from the product or service?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question again. And this is very relevant to a lot of the businesses I see around. So first of all, we had a development department, right? We had a crew of engineers. We had software people, right, developing our software. These are people that we hired and I don't want to say trained, but we hired and we brought along, in the mission of our business. And so that's a tremendous resource. Then we had a manufacturing operation that would manufacture our products and had a relationship with the vendors and suppliers and so forth. We had a sales team that would go out and sell the product, manage the representatives in this country and manage the distributors that we had overseas. As I say, we're selling in 25 countries. And so all of this was there. So somebody who is going to come in and buy the thing, they want to know that they're getting that, right? And they also want to know that they're getting the management. So one way that they do that is they have the top management people, the key managers, sign what's called an earnout. I'm sure you've heard about that. And basically, it says that you don't get all of the money from day one. You get a piece of it from day one, but there's more money that you get after 3 years or whatever period it is, because they want to. The last thing they want is to buy a company, and the day after they buy the company, top management is gone. The owners are gone, because in our case, we were, key to running the company. But they were able to determine that it wasn't just us, that we had a staff in place. If they thought it was just us, they would never buy the company. But we had, total of like 60 employees, and we were managing the company. We weren't doing everything, the nuts and bolts of everything. And so that gave them some assurance that the company could move forward even after we were gone. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes people buy companies, lots of times people buy companies and, they go down the drain because even though the buyer thought that they were getting certain things, the situation changes after the sale.
Yes. Yes. So from your purview, and I just regard you as such a jewel in the city. Part of the thing or the reason why we started up NextOppSocial is because we wanted to put entrepreneurs who've done the thing, right? As opposed to individuals who watched a YouTube video, read a book, and now they're dispensing advice about entrepreneurship. So for someone that has successfully grown, started, managed a company on a huge scale, and then now I see the work that you're doing with entrepreneurs and startups here in Detroit metropolitan area, I guess I'm going to pose the same question that I posed to you previously before we got started, right? When you think about the work that you're doing, obviously, I don't think it could possibly get boring because you meet new people, new personalities, experience, et cetera, et cetera. But are there things that are new to you? Is there still a newness to the experience in terms of helping business owners grow and launch? Or is it a situation where I've been there, done that, and kind of gets predictable and, it's almost like, I don't want to say cookie cutter because nothing's cookie cutter, but are there certain things that you just tease out and look at to ascertain whether or not a business is going to be successful and, what the end game can look like as you're advising and guiding individuals?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm learning new things every day, working with entrepreneurs, working with my students at University of Michigan. So I really, we did things kind of by the seat of our pants. We made a lot of good decisions in developing this business, but there's all the lights again. Karen.
Yeah, I've been there many a day and had to contend with that. Yes.
It's saving over here. So I forgot what I was saying.
But you were saying there's still things you're learning that's new every single day and flying by the seat of the pants and
confirming other things, right? And so, for example, one of the things that we determined in developing this business was that one of the reasons we were able to be successful is that the core expertise needed in making and selling our product was engineering expertise. We had to have the technical expertise to develop our product, right?
Yeah.
So here I've seen multiple examples of people who they're doing a product, particularly in software areas, where they want to have the core of their business is some software platform, some software product, or an app. That's the most popular example for the past few years. But the entrepreneurs don't have the talent to develop that in-house. So they have to go outside and have somebody develop an app for them or develop some piece of software for them, or that's what they're proposing to do anyway. And they seem to miss the fact that that's core to their business. That's core to their success, right? So you need to develop a team in-house that's going to develop that product. So you have to figure out, I'm not saying you can never farm that kind of thing out, but you only farm it out if it's not core to your business.
Right.
If it's a central part of what you're doing, there has to be something that distinguishes you from anybody else who might, want to jump into this area. And it has to be something that's pretty hard for somebody else to do, or it takes a lot of resources for them to do. And in the case of a lot of software products and apps and things, it happens to be technical expertise, right?
Yeah.
But as I say, there could be other expertise where the technical expertise is just something that's, that gets supplied to you. So I get things like that confirmed, right? When I'm working with a company now where these folks, what they're doing involves science and technology and whatnot, and they're scientists. And so it reassures me that, okay, yeah, they have the expertise that they need. Not only do they have it in themselves, but they can appreciate it in other people. They know what they're getting, right?
Mhm.
And so it would be like me saying, I'm gonna start a band, right? And perform around town, but I'm not a musician. I'm just gonna go hire this musician and that musician. They're not gonna respect me, right? Because I'm not a musician.
Right.
And so, whatever the core of your business is, you have to have that expertise in house. Otherwise, why would somebody buy it from you?
Yeah. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about a book. I think it was Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, where he shares the concept of 10,000 hours. That in order to achieve an elite level skill, whether you be soccer player, hockey player, basketball player, musician, executive, any endeavor, you have to put in a certain amount of time before you become really elite. And he does a study where he calculates that it's somewhere within 10,000 hours, right?
Yeah.
Some people have come out with books subsequently that says 3,000. Some have come out with books. But for me, the bottom line is you have to take time to achieve mastery. And in my at something, and because people don't pay 5-star prices for White Castle hamburgers, right?
You have to have deep expertise in something, right?
Yes.
In our case, the something was engineering, right? It wasn't finance. And I tell this story to people, and a lot of times they think I am crazy. They think this couldn't possibly be. But when we had the first prototype of our product finished, it was a big box. It was maybe 19 inches by, I don't know, 12 inches by, it was a big box, right?
Yeah.
And I had no financial sophistication, whatever. We spent 2 years developing this thing in my basement. And when it was time to go and try to raise some money to get a loan for us to turn this prototype into an actual production product, I went to a local bank. I put this thing on my passenger seat of my Volkswagen Scirocco. I put a belt around it, and I drove up to the drive-up window. And a teller came to the window and they said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yes, I'm here. I have my product here and I need a loan, so I can develop my business." That's how unsophisticated I was. But you don't have to be sophisticated in everything, but you have got to have, deep expertise in something. And like I say, in our case, it was engineering that bought us time to develop expertise in marketing and sales, and it even bought us time. I hired, expertise in finance. I hired a CFO who was really good and educated me on a lot of things. But if I didn't have deep expertise in something, we would have no shot.
I love it. Oh, I mean, it's such a valuable lesson here and what you're sharing. I know as we start to wrap up, a couple questions that I guess I have a million questions actually, but one of the questions that I've been thinking about as I've been listening to you, kind of reflecting on this conversation I knew we would have, is if you can point out 2 or 3 things that, aside from, of course, how critical it is to develop a specialized or a deep acumen in something, but if you could point out what are the errors that you see entrepreneurs making, whether it be mindset in terms of mental frameworks, or even in terms of their approach to starting businesses, where you say, look, this is a warning flag. You need to do a hard stop, make an adjustment here. Yeah. What are those things? What are those potholes or roadblocks you see people falling into?
Yeah. So actually, my buddy Reggie Barnett and I are actually writing a short book about this, because we talk about this all the time. And it's a set of lessons I learned from a guy who was advising me in marketing in the early days of my business. So I would start out saying, what problem are you solving, right? You're starting a business, you got to be solving a problem for somebody, and it's got to be important enough for them to pay you money.
Yep.
And then it gets to, okay, well, what's your solution? And does your solution actually, fit that problem? Does it solve that problem? And then the next thing is, if you can convince somebody, hey, this is I understand this problem you have. And this really is a serious problem. And by the way, here's how I can solve this problem for you, right? If they believe all that, they're still going to ask you, why you? why should I get this? The first thing they're going to do is they're going to look around. That sounds good. Who else does this, right? And so you have to be able to help people understand why you. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly nowadays, with all of this, all this advertising in the air about we want to help, we social justice and we want to help Black entrepreneurs and so on and so forth. People lose sight of the fact that it comes down to you have to be providing value for somebody, right? They have to think that doing business with you is going to leave them better off than not doing business with you. And you have to show them why that is. We were going to conservative white engineers at all these companies, Motorola, Rockwell, Hayes Microcomputer, all these places, AT&T even. Conservative folks, they weren't looking to buy something from three Black guys, especially something that cost $20,000 a copy, right? But we had to show them, yeah, this costs $20,000. It's going to make you $80,000. Now, at that point, you're crazy if you don't buy it, right?
Right.
And I think too often we as entrepreneurs get enamored with what we're doing. We forget that we have to sell people on the notion that this is good for you, right? We have to think in terms of the customer, right? What are we doing for them, right? How is this going to make their life better? And we have to be very clear about it. And I think if you can do that, and if you can do it in such a way that you're doing it for a number of different people, you've got a business that works.
I love it. Last question as I start to wrap up here. I know why I'm so gung-ho about entrepreneurship. And I just firmly believe it's a necessity, particularly in the African American community. I think it's an absolute necessity. But why are you so passionate about entrepreneurship? And when you look at your legacy and what you've achieved and the outcomes that have occurred, when you fast forward, whether it be 5, 10, 20, 30 years, however long we're blessed to be on this earth, right? When people take inventory of it, what do you want people to say?
Well, again, I'm excited about entrepreneurship because it's about solving problems. Entrepreneurship is a fancy word that's unpopular, but it's really problem solving. I'm solving your problem. In return for solving your problem, I'm creating value for you. So I'm going to get something in return for creating that value for you. But it's solving problems, and whether it's a problem in education or public safety, or we have so many problems, there's always problems. There are always going to be problems, right? And so it's a way of making things better in a community to be able to solve problems for people, especially if they're important problems, and especially if you're doing it in such a way that by solving this problem, I'm getting richer, right? Because you recognize that I'm providing this value for you. And so I get excited about that, and having money come in my direction, not because I need more and more money, just because that's the way I operate. It means that I did something for you. That's why I got this money. I hate money going the other way, right? Especially if I feel like I'm not getting value for it. And I think that's why successful entrepreneurs are often viewed as being cheap, right? Often viewed as being ultra frugal, because it's not because they're mean or nasty. They just you have this mindset of value exchange, right? And if I'm getting good value, I don't mind, giving you that dollar. And if I give good value, I want to see that dollar, right? And so it's a mindset.
I'm glad you shared that. 'Cause I mean, I think, and I'll be transparent, it was a mindset that I had. And it took me years to overcome it. You know, I started out community activist, you know, and it's interesting listening to you because there's such a disconnect. I think when I look at community activists from my generation to your generation, and I feel like it was something that was kind of lost in the translation. Because I remember coming up, and a lot of people share this ideal today. They have this concept in their head that if you're successful as an entrepreneur, if you're earning more than everyone else around you, somehow you were nefarious, you did something wrong, you actually extracted value from the community as opposed to empowered or gave the community value. And listening to you is a reminder of the journey I had to go through, where I was like, no, if you are helping people and you found a way to scale the value you bring to the community, you should be compensated accordingly.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
And that doesn't mean you shouldn't be taxed, right? You know, but you know, you should receive the value for. And so, as an entrepreneur, as you're aware, you get paid last. So whatever money you manage to have and keep and put in the bank is after you've paid everybody else. And all of those people that we hired over the years, you know, those people have cars and homes, and their kids have gone to college now. A lot of them got married, and you know, he paid for college educations and all this kind of stuff. But that was, you know, we paid all of them first, right? We got what we got over. And I think people don't appreciate that enough. And we could have a whole nother discussion about, you know, things in the news today with like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos and, you know, people like that. And, you know, I think that there are issues both ways, sometimes on other issues that involved with these folks. But for example, if you're Elon Musk and you've transformed, you know, the way people get from point A to point B, and made it a lot less energy intensive and made it sustainable and possibly save the earth, right?
Right.
There should be some money in that for you.
I would concur. Yeah.
So that's notwithstanding all the, you know, the goofy juvenile, you know, Twitter stuff, which I don't understand that, but I, up until lately, some of this stuff occurring, I was a big fan of this guy. I have 2 of his cars, right? And same thing with Jeff Bezos. You change the way people get stuff, right? And make it totally convenient and easy, right? And cost effective. There should be something in it for you, you know.
Well, the market certainly says it should be.
Yeah.
The market, people have kind of spoken.
Yeah. And again, I don't say that, I don't think that it should be so easy to get to being being worth $250 million. You know, we used to have a 90% marginal tax rate in this country. And so I do think that we're not, once people have succeeded to a tremendous extent, you know, I think there should be, well, I shouldn't say there should be. I think that it would be reasonable to consider, changing the taxation situation. But what I'm trying to do, I would like to see more of those people, because I'd like to say in 10 years that somebody solved this problem of urban education, and got rich doing that, or somebody's public health and got rich doing that, right? Solved wealth disparity and got rich doing that. So that's why I'm so intent on focusing people on entrepreneurship as a solution for some of these things. I think it's the only viable and sustainable solution out there.
I love it. I love it. Well, I know you have another time commitment to run to, because I have a legal pad full of questions and notes that I could inundate with you with. And certainly I would hope that at some point you would return back as a guest, because I just think you bring so much value and perspective to the table, just from a historical standpoint. And of course, the work that you're doing is invaluable today. And I thank you for your time, really do.
I'm happy to do it. And sometime maybe we can get together and talk about where the Urban Entrepreneurship Initiative is going now, because I think you might find that interesting and something you might want to participate in.
I look forward to it.
All right.
Definitely. The invitation's accepted.
Right.
And of course, for our audience here, look, if you have derived value from this, you know what to do, right? Help the social media gods, so to speak, realize that we are bringing value to the marketplace. Hit that like button, hit the share button, comment. We eat feedback and criticism equally like Skittles. We love it, right? It helps us become more effective at what it is that we're doing here. So we thank you, and thank you again, Mr. Tarver. Have an incredible day. Celebrate your continued success.
All right, Dewan. Thank you.
Yes.
Going.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yes.